it's all good. But at any rate, again, it's great to meet you. And I'd love to begin our conversation with 4 years ago, we were really in the thick of figuring out this pandemic we all went through. How
Mhm.
did you survive that time period, and how has it subsequently changed you?
Yeah, the pandemic. Um, I did not realize at the time how radically my life was going to shift in the process of that. Coming up to that, I had been building a business in the automotive body shop space for that would have been 8 or 9 years at that point. And so we had a few locations, brick and mortar locations around Denver. And I had the experience of getting completely burned out. Um, I like my headspace was not good. And I felt really handcuffed to the thing that I had built from the ground up. And I remember whenever the pandemic first started and our phones went silent, it was a ghost town. Nothing was going on. And it was the first time ever since I had started that business in 2012 that I thought, okay, what might I do if I don't do this? And a little bit of internal crisis in the moment because I've always launched businesses and ran my own things. And at that point, I didn't have something else on the radar. And then I was faced with, well, I know that I have certain skill sets that apply to building businesses, but like if I was to get a job somewhere, like I'm in, it's going to be rough. Like my
Yeah.
resume does not work well for that. And so I tried my hands for the first time at flipping houses. So I jumped right into that world and did that simultaneously of running the other company. And through that, um, had some successful projects, and serendipitously was able to find a way to exit that business. And then, which is a huge shift in my world and my identity. And then from there, have launched a couple of companies since. Um, but the pandemic was a huge gift for me because it allowed me to kind of shake the snow globe and reimagine what life could look like.
So, speaking of that snow globe of what you do right now in 2024, with all of the snow settling, if you were in front of a bunch of third graders at career day and one of the kids said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?"
Mm.
How do you answer that child?
Yeah, so I have two businesses at the moment. One focuses on working with individuals who want to uh, invest in real estate and specifically in serving people who are looking for short-term rental Airbnb style properties. So we work with homeowners and investors in that world and manage a handful of properties across Colorado and in Texas and help facilitate memories for people. That's what we do. And then the second area of focus is a coaching business where my partner and I specifically support entrepreneurs and leaders within companies who want to approach success from a more holistic manner. And they've already experienced some traction. They've already had success in their line of work, but they want to and feel a need to find alignment with what makes them tick. And so being able to really dig into their purpose, into what their soul is actually like demanding that they do if they're going to live in a way that feels fulfilled and purposeful. And so we help leaders navigate that process.
So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
Yeah, in third grade, I mean, my whole childhood, I was solely focused on going in the military, actually.
Okay.
And wanted to go to the Naval Academy and go the Special Forces route. And I had a pretty significant life-changing injury at a stage whenever I was needing to make some moves in that direction. And that was another big pivotal moment where I ended up not going to college, went to this internship and met my wife there. And then through that, ended up jumping right into entrepreneurship and launching companies.
So, are you originally from Denver?
From South Carolina
Okay.
originally.
Okay. So take me back to the beginnings. Was this whole idea and dream of being an entrepreneur, was this in your DNA? How did that kind of develop?
Yeah, it absolutely was in me at a young age. You know, some of the archetypal stories of, the kid who's just like hustling, getting in trouble at school for selling stuff, um, buying packs of candy and individually selling them off for 25 cents a piece and making money there, and then lawn care and other home service based work for people in the neighborhood. So yeah, that was in me at quite a young age. I mean, that probably started, that was in elementary school. So probably 8 or 9 years old, I was already kind of moving in that direction.
So who's your favorite entrepreneur? Who do you admire the most that built a model that is solid, that makes sense to you?
Yeah, there are a couple of individuals for me. One is a guy named Jesse Elder, who is now his full-time gig is coaching at leaders specifically, but he built a business in the martial arts space, sold that company, and now coaches other individuals. And he just embodies an energy of alignment. Like, it's obvious that he knows what uh, is resonant to him, and he follows that with complete fidelity. So him, and then other individuals who honestly have experienced some significant trials along the way are people that I tend to gravitate to. I mean, I had a pretty dark season a couple of years ago and had to rebuild who I am at a ground level. And so, if you think about someone like an Ed Milet or Patrick Bet David, guys like this who the path wasn't obvious and they had to overcome some serious internal stories that were limiting and even destructive. And then they built things out of that. Those stories end up being compelling to me.
So who's been a hero for you? Who's been an overriding inspiration for you in your journey in your life?
Yeah. So those guys that I mentioned, another gentleman named Aubrey Marcus has been heavily impactful for me. They tend to be people who are not one dimensional in their success. So they are going to be people who have experienced objective business and financial success, but they seem to be doing so in a way that it's apparent that their soul is expressed in the field that they're in. So yeah, those guys that I mentioned would be in that camp. Um, yeah.
So of all of those guys you mentioned, or maybe there's someone else, if you could meet
Mhm.
one person on the planet right now that you admire, you find fascinating, you would love to pick their brain, who would that person be?
Yeah, it would be Jesse Elder. And for those that are not aware of him already, he does have some content on Spotify and YouTube. And he, you know, if you look from the outside in, there's guys who have done bigger things. But for quite a few years, my only focus was going big. I swung for the fences every single time, and that burned me out. And so, in this season of life, now that I have two young kids as well, I am increasingly valuing the individual who can approach success on all fronts. Like, I want to build successful businesses, but I also want to bring up kids who are amazing individuals, who bring value to the world. I want to make sure that my marriage goes the distance, that I am building community and supporting people around me. And so success for me is going to necessarily hold a holistic and a wide swath of what that encompasses.
What's one of your favorite professional success stories up to this point?
Favorite success stories, probably because it's front of mind. Uh, I've recently been reading Elon Musk's biography,
Yeah,
and he's someone that stands out again. Uh, it's he is evidently a smart cat, like you can't get around that.
yeah.
But uh, he would not have done a fraction of what he has if there would not have been an extraordinary amount of resilience and grit in the process. And uh, and that dynamic is incredibly compelling to me.
What is your ultimate drive, not only to be a successful entrepreneur, but to obviously evolve as a human being yourself? What is that that gets you out of bed, that fuels your desire to dream and become who you are?
It's living a story that's compelling enough that others find inspiration from it. Like that's for me every day. What gets me going is uh, being able to live a life that's worth following, that's worth taking some notes on. And a big part of my framework and the work that I do from a coaching standpoint is about what we call story architecting. So being the individual who can be in the driver's seat of their experience and architect the narrative of their life in a way that uh, evi- with strong evidence, we can see that it brings value to the world, and it like sucks other people into finding the highest expression of them. So that applies for those within my companies, to my kids. I want to live in a way where they look at me and they are not only proud of the dad that they have, but they would feel proud if they were able to follow in some of my footsteps. So I want to live in a way that drives that.
So at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, you have to be a leader and you have to dispense good advice to people. But what's the best advice that you've ever gotten?
It's taking complete ownership. Um, Absolutely necessary in my process, even of finding my way through a season of pretty dark depression. Was a point when I had evidence for a negative story about who Anson was. Like I'd stacked that kind of evidence. Not only that, I had reasons why that I had that evidence. There's certain circumstances of growing up, experiences in business where I was either stolen from or wronged. Like I had reasons why things weren't working, and everything shifted whenever I was able to look at those things in the mirror, in my own eyes, and say, "And it's all your fault, buddy." It's like, and not in a way that's uh, eliciting shame, but rather the process of that kind of ownership. It takes uh, the responsibility of whatever the dynamics of the situation are, and it puts it back in my hands, because then I can affect it. But if I don't take complete responsibility for everything, especially the negative components, I'm delegating that power to something else, and that uh, in line with that, I lose my own agency in the process. And so, yeah, it's completely around uh, radical ownership.
So along those same lines, let's say you have a dream tonight, you run into that version of you, that younger version of you, where you had to decide that the military wasn't your path and you were going to become an entrepreneur. And you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you impart on that young version of you? And would that version of you listen?
Yeah, good question. Would he listen? I'll start there. You know, for many years of my life, I looked for individuals that I could relate to as a mentor. Like I was hungry for that, and that was tough to find over the years. And I had to reimagine what it meant to have a mentor and how to be guided. And so I think that I could have, if it would have come from someone that, when I looked at their life, I respected the evidence of their story. So, with that being said, if that respect was in place, um, saying what I would say to my younger self would be, Anson, do not hide. Do not hide from the difficult emotions, from the areas where you sense there's a lack or a deficit in skills or competencies. Um, and it's obviously related to the ownership and responsibility piece. But I spent decades hiding from my own shadows, the things that I would not want to be highlighted about myself. And that inhibited my growth for many years, was that hiding. And so, yeah, I would encourage them to step into the light fully.
So of all of the things that you've done and evolved into in your life, what are you the proudest of?
It's the courage and the humility to rebuild myself when I did not feel like I had any. I didn't feel like I had an ounce of hope in my story. And the the ability that I demonstrated to eat as much humble pie as I had to, and being willing and disciplined and taking deliberate actions and steps to change the narrative, to actually move the needle in a new direction, um, but it would be central to what I'm proud of.
So at the end of the day, Anson, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Yeah, I see myself as a man who's relentlessly pursuing his highest expression. Um, I, for a number of years, whenever if I was ever posed the question of what was it that I feared, I struggled with that for years because there wasn't anything obvious that I feared. And it wasn't until fairly recently where um, I was reflecting through journaling, which is a pretty consistent practice of mine. And I realized that what I feared most was not becoming the full expression, not taking my story to its fullest and most robust expression. And so, um, yeah, that is core to what drives me. And I do not want to get at the end of my life and look at it and say, man, I left a lot on the table. I allowed fear to dictate. Um, and that's something else that I hope to be able to impart, especially to my kids.
Yeah. So let's say we get off this call, time machine pulls up in front of your house. You can go back in time and see one event in human history, or you can go in the future and see what's going on. Where are you going? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I would probably want to sit down with and look into the life of Marcus Aurelius.
Okay, right on.
um, yeah, his story and his approach to living in a way that uh, where the level of responsibility that he had to navigate is hard to fathom, while simultaneously being an individual who uh, was obsessive about his uh, approach and pursuit of self-awareness, and being conscious of his internal dynamics and the way they affected the world around him.
So if anyone wants to reach out, learn more about what you're doing, any of the good business in your world, where's the best
Yeah.
place for anybody to go?
Yeah. So two ways. One would be through Instagram, where I'm fairly active. So that's Thrive with Anson. And there I will, be posting content from my own thoughts and reflections on things, from coaching to Airbnb, and then directly via email. So that would be Anson at selfcoachingproject.com.
Right on. Anson, this is so good, man. What an enlightening conversation. Thank you for your story. Keep doing the
Yeah.
good work out there, man.
Yeah, man. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. And I got to